Republican Congressman Will Hurd of Texas. He is a former CIA officer and he serves on the Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, thank you for making the time for us. And you hear Aaron's report there that there are so many potential terrorists that could be tracked. But we now know that the attacker was known to German authorities. So to you, that he slipped through the cracks so many times, is this a failure on the part of German authorities, or are they just drinking out of a fire hose when it comes to potential threats?
I think one of the things that they're going to have to analyze is whether this was something slipping through the cracks. Earlier this year, I participated in a task force in Congress, ably led by Congressman John Katko of New York, looking at terrorist travel from Europe and other places to the United States. And one of the things that we found was that folks in Europe were not checking the travel documents, every single travel documents of folks. They weren't checking the names of travelers against known watch lists. And this was a problem that we saw in places like France earlier in the year, and I think we're going to see this here in Germany. One of the things that we learned here in the United States since 9/11 is that when you get good information sharing between local, state, and federal intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies is the best way to protect the homeland.
That you're more likely to catch someone there. And I wonder, as a CIA officer for many years, can you take us behind the scenes a little bit, just how difficult it is to track and to keep an eye on potential attackers?
The volume of information that our intelligence services have to manage is vast. And we have, if people knew the size of our actual intelligence agencies, they'd be pretty shocked at how small it is and how they really do punch above their weight. And then when you deal with a permissive environment like Europe, where it's easy to move back and forth across international boundaries, that further complicates the effort. But what's going on right now is that our intelligence agencies are working as close as we can with the Germans on providing any information that we may know, but also learning and understanding what new piece of information they have to see if we have information about similar attacks on our homeland or against our resources across the country, or across the world, excuse me.
Are you pretty comfortable, I mean, are you pretty confident that Germany is going to find this suspect?
I think so. When you have all these countries marshal their resources to find someone, the fact that they know the many different passports that he traveled in before, the fact that they're putting his face up everywhere, I think you're going to ultimately lead to this. When the Germans are a very good service, and they're going to put all their resources to find this person and this killer and bring him to justice.
This is a guy who came to Germany in 2015, and what we're seeing is this backlash now against the chancellor there and this policy of opening the door to refugees. Now, we're still waiting to find out exact details about this man who is a Tunisian national. But as you know, President-elect Donald Trump has been extremely against taking in refugees. In light of this, and certainly the concerns that this may create, what do you think about that position of his?
Well, we have to remember this is a symptom of a larger problem. If we would have engaged effectively in Syria and other parts of the Middle East sooner, you would not have had an extensive refugee problem on our hands. You wouldn't have 4 million Syrians displaced. You wouldn't have seen a spillover in other countries in North Africa. And so we have to remember and take away the lessons from this. And that means we got to take the fight to the doorstep of the people that are targeting us. And that means ISIS in Iraq and Syria. That means keeping Al-Qaeda on the run in places like Yemen. And we have to have aggressive policies against them, the kinetic action against them. But it also means we have to improve the kind of intelligence that is coming out of these organizations. We got to better understand the plans and intentions of these terrorist organizations. And that means increasing the amount of human intelligence in many of these hotspots.
And also countering recruitment. That's been one of the big issues, too. So I wonder if, as you see this heightened anti-refugee rhetoric, do you worry that that actually helps with recruitment? For instance, we know that this suspect in Germany was in touch with the recruitment network.
Right. One of the things that makes ISIS so deadly is their ability to inspire people even if they're 6,000 miles away. And so we have to address and attack their resources in order to get that message out. But we also have to be out there countering that message as well. And I don't think we've done a good enough job on that from a U.S. side, but also from an international community perspective either. When I was chasing Al-Qaeda in the CIA, they would do things called night letters, putting a letter on a doorstep. But ISIS is doing 4 social media campaigns a day, translating it into 49 dialects, and impacting tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people a day. And that is a tool that they're using to inspire these kinds of attacks all over the world.
With the suspect on the loose in Germany, how concerned are you that we could be seeing another strike, or another strike that could also be facilitated by others?
Well, I think everybody in Europe is going to be on high alert. You're seeing how some of these pedestrian malls and activities that are going on in other parts of Germany. They're putting up additional barriers to prevent vehicular traffic. And so I think security forces throughout that part of Europe needs to be thinking about this time and where people are going and what additional protections they can take and how can they stay alert. And again, one of the important pieces here is if you get the right information to the right people at the right time, you keep terrorists on the run. And this is something that we always have to strive for. And here in the United States, since 9/11, what I call horizontal sharing information across the federal government has improved. But we even have a ways to go when it comes to sharing with state and local law enforcement. And so this is something that every country has to be focused on. And if we prove information sharing networks within our own countries and we figure out how to tap into this together, this is how we can make sure we have a global dragnet to stop these people.
All right, Congressman Will Hurd, stay with me. You are a member of the Homeland Security Committee, a former member of the intelligence community, so we have a lot to talk about, especially when it pertains to Russia and U.S. relations and the President-elect. We'll have more in just a moment on that. Listen, that if the U.S. and Russia are talking at all, it's at a, quote, minimum. Well, the Pentagon and the State Department both say that contacts are continuing. And we're back now with Republican Congressman Will Hurd of Texas. He serves on the Homeland Security Committee. He's also a former CIA undercover officer. So what do you think about that when you hear a spokesman for the Kremlin saying that almost all levels of dialogue with the U.S. are frozen and that the two countries don't talk to each other, and then the State Department is saying there is engagement? You have Secretary Kerry, who just spoke with the foreign minister of Russia yesterday. Why is Russia doing this?
Well, Russia is very good at information operations, and that's using many of their official spokespeople to put information out that's not completely accurate. So, you know, I would trust more what our folks in the State Department and the military are saying. This is the Russians have shown in Eastern Europe, in Germany, here in the United States, that they try to sow misinformation. And what their objective in saying that is, I don't know, but that's something that hopefully our intelligence agencies are looking to understand.
Could they be trying to make things look bad under the Obama administration in an effort to curry favor with an incoming administration? Is that possible?
You know, anything's possible when it comes to the Russians. The one thing that I do know is that they are our adversary. If they were interested in cooperating, they would have cooperated a lot more when it comes to Syria and the fight against ISIS. If they were interested in cooperating, they would not have invaded Ukraine. So I think it's disingenuous to think that the Russians feel like they're an aggrieved party in any form or fashion. One of the things I learned when I was in the CIA is be tough with tough guys and nice with nice guys. And I think having a tough approach when it comes to Russia is a way forward.
And don't be nice with tough guys. I assume that's also part of it, right? Okay, so
exactly.
The CIA, the FBI, the DNI, they've all said they are on the same page when it comes to Russia hacking various political organizations during the election. But President-elect Trump continues to say he doesn't know who did it. And you're in a uniquely positioned place as a Republican lawmaker, but also a former member of the Intelligence Committee. What do you make of this? What's your reaction to this?
I think over the last couple of weeks, a lot of different pieces of information has been conflated. I think President-elect Trump has made it clear that he does believe a further investigation by the intelligence services is a valid pursuit, and that the Russians did not impact the outcome of the election. They did not manipulate the ones or zeros when it comes to the voting boxes and the voting machines. My committee held a hearing on this topic, and we can be assured of the integrity of the election. But it's very clear, and the intelligence community has said this, that it was Russian groups connected to Russian intelligence that was involved in the hacking of the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and the DNC. And I will say this, the DCCC spent $6 million trying to unseat me here in Texas, but an attack on them is an attack on all of us. And there has to be a response to this type of behavior. Again, this is
But you say Donald Trump has said further investigation is valid. I mean, the message that seems to really be coming through from him is that he's casting doubt. I mean, do you agree with him that there is doubt about who did it? Do you agree with him that until there is more investigation, you're not signing on to a commitment to who did this?
I think the hacking of the DCCC and the DNC is very clear that it was two groups connected to Russian intelligence. I think that is a very clear idea. Now, what is a little bit more ambiguous is who within Russian intelligence okayed this activity, how much did Vladimir Putin actually know. There's all this reports about a CIA report. But didn't you see an intel
community report that is saying this went up to very high levels?
So what we saw was two unnamed officials in the national intelligence apparatus saying there was a CIA report. We do not know what kind of report that was. Was that a piece of FI, or foreign intelligence, from a single source? Was this a directive of intelligence product that had all source analysis? Was this a product that has an alternative analysis? And so having a debate, and none of us know what that was, nor should we, because it is a classified piece of information. And if we really want to understand the plans and intentions of the Russian government, we have to have well-placed sources, human sources, to do that. And to have those well-placed sources, that means someone is putting themselves in harm's way. And by having folks within the intelligence community leak this kind of information, that puts those people in danger. And so I do believe the national intelligence apparatus needs to have an honest self-assessment about what are our capabilities to determine what happened in cases like this.
But how do we do that if you're saying we shouldn't know this information, and yet also casting doubt on the fact that it's two unnamed intelligence officials, which, I mean, of course it is, right? Because this is sensitive stuff. You're a former undercover CIA operative.
Absolutely. And that's why you have intelligence oversight committees to do that. That's why you have members that have been on these committees for a long time that understand the nature of working on intelligence. And so there are some things that we can have an open dialogue on, what is an appropriate response to a hostile government that tries to influence information concerning our election, or who hacks information of an American company or entity. What is an appropriate response there? Those are some of the conversations we should be having out in the open, and can have out in the open, because determining what our response is going to be is also a form of deterrence. And this is where a lot of the conversation should go. But what an individual source may or may not know, that's something that should be handled within the existing infrastructure of the intelligence community, because I think they're best able to ask the tough questions of the intelligence community, but ensure that we're protecting sources and methods so that we don't put someone's life in harm's way who's trying to help us better understand this crazy world we live in.
All right, Congressman Will Hurd of Texas, we do appreciate it. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Coming up, U.S. sources say that Russia has tested